Hello, this is a video lesson on the anatomy of the digestive system. The alimentary canal is a muscular membranous tube that extends from the mouth to the anus. The components include the mouth, which is the area for mastication, and mastication means chewing. The pharynx and the esophagus are the organs of deglutition, which includes swallowing. The stomach is where digestion begins, and the small intestine is where digestion is completed, mostly in the duodenum. The large intestine terminates at the anus, and it's the organ of digestion and water absorption. The first division of the digestive system is the mouth. The oral cavity the roof is formed by the hard and soft palates, and the floor is formed by the tongue. The hard palate is the anteriormost portion of the roof of the oral cavity. It's formed by the horizontal plates of the maxilla and the palatine bones. And we've got that area shown here. There we go. And so the anterior and lateral boundaries are formed by the inner wall of the maxillary alveolar processes, which extends superiorly and medially to blend with the horizontal processes. The soft palate, which is shown in the picture also, begins behind the last molar and suspends from the posterior portion or border of the hard palate. It functions as a partial septum between the mouth and the pharynx. The uvula is a small pendulous process at the center of the inferior border. The anterior arches project forward to the sides to the base of the tongue. The posterior arches project to blend with the posterolateral walls of the pharynx, and between those two arches are the tonsils. The palatine tonsils are located bilaterally. There are three pair of salivary glands. First of all, we have the largest one is the parotid gland. The next is the submandibular gland, which is located beneath the mandible, and then the sublingual glands. They produce about 1 liter of saliva per day, and each gland is composed of numerous lobes, and each lobe contains small lobules. The whole gland is held together by connective tissue and a fine network of blood vessels and ducts. The pharynx serves as a passageway for both air and food and is part of two systems, both the respiratory and the digestive. It's the musculomembranous tubular structure located in front of the vertebra and behind the nose, the mouth, and the larynx, and it's approximately 5 inches in length. The pharynx extends from the inferior body of the sphenoid bone and the basilar portion of the occipital bone and extends to C6, C7. At the level of C6, C7, it becomes continuous with the esophagus, and it is divided into three portions, which we'll take a look at. The epiglottis itself is situated above the laryngeal entrance, and its purpose is to prevent food from passing into the larynx during swallowing. The nasopharynx, which is going to be located behind the nose, it's behind both the soft and hard palates. The upper part of the hard palate forms the floor of the nasopharynx. It communicates anteriorly with the posterior apertures of the nose. The oropharynx is located behind the mouth, oro means mouth. It's the area of the pharynx extending from the soft palate to the hyoid bone. And the base of the tongue forms the anterior wall. And then there's the laryngeal pharynx, which is the last part. It lies posterior to the larynx, and its anterior wall is formed by the posterior surface of the larynx. It extends inferiorly to become continuous with the esophagus. The esophagus is a muscular tube about 10 inches long and 3/4 inch in diameter. It lies in the mid-sagittal plane and begins at C6. Here's the cervical portion of the esophagus. It passes through the diaphragm, which is at T10, and ends at T11, which is the location of the cardiac opening of the stomach. It functions to convey food and saliva from the laryngopharynx to the stomach. The stomach is a dilated sac-like portion of the digestive tract extending between the esophagus and the small intestine. Its first part is referred to as the cardia. It's a section surrounding the esophageal opening. Then there's the fundus, which is the most superior portion that fills the dome of the left hemodiaphragm. The body is located between the fundus and the pyloric portion, and it contains internally numerous longitudinal folds called rugae. And then there's the pyloric portion, which includes the pyloric antrum and the pyloric canal. So the pyloric antrum is this portion here, and there's the pyloric canal. So that's the area of the pyloric portion, right before or superior to the duodenum. Starting off with the lesser curvature, which is the right medial border, that's the smaller border. We have a greater curvature, which is on the other side. It's the left lateral border. There's the cardiac notch, which is a sharp angle at the esophagogastric junction. There's exit and entrance controlled by sphincters. So there's a cardiac sphincter, which is a muscle. So the cardiac orifice is the opening for between the esophagus and the stomach, and the cardiac sphincter is a muscle that controls the cardiac orifice. There's also a pyloric orifice, which is an opening, and then the pyloric sphincter, which is the muscle as well that controls the pyloric orifice. As far as anatomy is concerned, we have two major groups that we have to consider. We've got the hypersthenic patient, which is the stomach is more horizontal and higher, just looking at it more horizontal and then more transverse. And then the asthenic patient is their stomach is going to be more vertical and much lower. The functions of the stomach include a storage area for food during digestion. It can secretes acids, enzymes, and other chemicals to chemically break down food. It chemically breaks down food by churning and peristalsis. Chyme is what is the result from what leaves the stomach is chemically and mechanically altered food. Peristalsis are the contraction ways by which the digestive tube propels contents toward the rectum. There are 3 or 4 ways per minute that occur in the filled stomach. The emptying time for the stomach is approximately 2 to 3 hours. The small intestine extends from the pyloric sphincter to the ileocecal valve. The function is digestion and absorption of food. The average length of the adult small intestine is 22 feet. Its diameter begins with the duodenum at about 1.5 inches in diameter, to the remainder being about 1 inch in diameter. The 3 sections are the duodenums that I've already circled, the jejunum, which is mostly in the left lower quadrant, is on the left side mostly, and the ileum is mostly in the right lower quadrant. The mucosa contained villi, and villi are like cilia, but they're finger-like projections that assist in digestion and absorption. The duodenum is 8 to 10 inches long and is the widest part of the small intestine. It's C-shaped. It has 4 sections. The first is called the superior portion, which is the top up here, called the duodenal bulb. The second is the descending portion, where it comes down. And the second part's going to pass inferiorly along the head of the pancreas and under the liver. The common bile duct unites with the pancreatic duct to form the hepatopancreatic ampulla, also known as the ampulla vator, and that opens on the greater duodenal in the duodenum. So this is where this all happens, right here in the second portion. The third portion is horizontal, And the fourth portion is the ascending. So it's going to be coming back up over here. The fourth section joins the jejunum is a sharp curvature called the duodenal flexure. This flexure is supported by the suspense muscle of the duodenum called ligament of Treves. Okay, the duodenum, we can see that we have that C-shape appearance, and we can also see that the ducts and the pancreas are also very much around surrounding the duodenum. So the looking at the duodenum, we have the pyloric portion, the first part of the duodenum. Here's the gallbladder along with the cystic duct, the common hepatic duct. Here's the common bile duct coming down, and then the pancreatic duct coming across here with the opening into the duodenum. This is an image of the common bile duct showing from where it empties into the duodenum from the major duodenal papilla. We can see the pancreatic duct and the common bile duct, and then the hepatopancreatic ampulla. And then this area in pink here is the duodenum. And then here's another picture showing the duodenum with the common hepatic duct, then showing the common bile duct coming down here, and then joining with the pancreatic duct coming across. And then again, there's the hepatopancreatic ampulla, and there's the papilla, where the opening goes into the duodenum. And here's a picture showing how the pancreas is all surrounded within it too. And here's the villi that we were talking about earlier as well. The jejunum is forms the upper 2/5 of the small intestine. It's shown here in purple. And the ileum is the lower 3/5 of the small intestine. Both are gathered into freely movable loops called gyri. They're attached to the posterior wall by the mesentery. The gyri lie in the central and lower abdominal cavity within the arch of the large intestine. So peristalsis, as we talked about before, is that wave-like motion that happens within the digestive system, and the average transit time to the ileocecal valve is 2 to 3 hours. So it takes quite a while for the transit through the small intestine. The large intestine begins in the right iliac region and ends at the anus. So there's an arch that forms around the loops of the small intestine. The parts include the cecum, which is the very first part. So the ileum and the cecum come together to form the ileocecal valve. There's the colon, which includes the ascending colon, the transverse colon, and the descending colon, as well as the sigmoid colon. Then we have the rectum and the anus, looking at the parts. The large intestine is about 5 foot long. It's greater in diameter. It has haustra, which are a series of pouches along the large intestine. It has muscular bands that form haustra, which are the bands that we can see here, as along so we've got that smooth elimination of waste. The functions of the large intestine is reabsorption of fluids and elimination of waste products. And the cecum is a portion that we have to discuss, is just that portion right here. It's actually the 2.5 inches long and 3 inches in diameter. It's a pouch-like portion below the junction of the ileum and the colon. The variform appendix is attached to the posterior lateral side of the cecum. And so just taking a look at that, where that's located. Now the colon has 4 portions, as I mentioned earlier. It has the ascending colon, the transverse colon, the descending colon, and then the sigmoid colon. The ascending colon passes superiorly from the junction with the cecum, underside of the liver, and is on the right side of the body. So this is the right side over here. and here's the left side. So this is referred to as the right colic flexure. We have the transverse colon, which is going to be located between the two flexures. It's the longest, the most movable, and crosses the abdomen to the underside of the spleen. We also have the left colic flexure, which is on the left side. It's the angle between the transverse and the descending colons. Then there's the descending colon, which is where we have passage from inferiorly and medially to junction with the sigmoid, and it's on the left side of the body. And then finally, we have the sigmoid, which is an S-shaped loop, ends in the rectum at the level of S3. So one way to remember this is we have ascending, which is AC, in alphabetical order, going to DC, ACDC, also the band, to remember that the AC is on the right side and the descending colon is on the left side. The rectum extends from the sigmoid to the anal canal. So here's the rectum, there's the anal canal, and then it terminates at the anus. The large intestine varies greatly in size, and body habitus is a great factor. The liver is the largest gland in the body. Its job is to produce bile. It produces bile at a rate of 1 to 3 pints per day. The bile is collected from the liver cells by ducts and carried to the gallbladder for temporary storage, or it is poured into the duodenum through the common bile duct. The gallbladder is a thin-walled musculomembranous sac. It's located in the inferior surface of the right lobe of the liver, and it stores bile, about 3 ounces of bile in total. Muscular contraction of the gallbladder is activated by a hormone called cholecystokinin. The parts are the neck, which is the lower portion down here. It connects to the body, and then the fundus is over at the end. The location is the inferior surface of the right lobe of the liver, and its position does vary with body habitus. Its function, as mentioned before, is to store, and that it also concentrates bile. Looking at the position of the gallbladder in your patients with various body habitus, you can see the patient who's hypersthenic, the gallbladder is located very superior and very lateral. On the asthenic patient is very medially and very low, just looking at the body habitus and the difference in how the gallbladder is positioned. So taking a look at the next portion, which is the gallbladder, we have the cystic duct coming off the gallbladder, and then we have the hepatic ducts coming from the liver, which will be joining down. And then here's the common bile duct like we talked about before, the pancreatic duct. This is the hepatopancreatic ampulla, and then the major duodenal papilla emptying into the duodenum. So just to talk about the liver and the biliary system, we have the right and the hepatic ducts form the common hepatic duct. The common hepatic duct and the cystic duct combine or joined to form the common bile duct. The common bile duct joins the pancreatic duct. Together they empty into the hepatopancreatic ampulla called the ampulla vator, and the ampulla is controlled by the sphincter of the hepatopancreatic ampulla, otherwise called the sphincter of Oddi. Taking a look at the different parts, we have the right hepatic duct and the left hepatic duct that are labeled here. We have the cystic duct, which is coming from the gallbladder, and the two hepatic ducts, the right and the left, come together to form the common hepatic duct. So that's what its job is the common hepatic duct. Then the cystic duct and the common hepatic duct come together and they form the common bile duct. The common bile duct extends down to where it then joins with the pancreatic duct. And that's what it's doing here. This is the pancreatic duct. And together they come down and they have the hepatopancreatic ampulla, and then eventually we get down to the ampulla of Vater. Now the pancreas is the exocrine gland of portion, there's an exocrine portion of the gland which produces pancreatic juice that acts on proteins, fats, and carbohydrates, and it produces digestive juices that are secreted into the duodenum. The endocrine portion of the gland produces hormones that are specifically insulin and glucagon. As it is an important gland because it has both an exocrine and an endocrine portion. Now, the spleen has nothing to do with the digestive system. It's a completely ductless gland that produces lymphocytes and stores and removes dead or dying red blood cells, but it's mentioned with the digestive system because it certainly is right in the location of the digestive system. And this is the cross-sectional view of the liver and the biliary system. Just pointing out a couple things on this slide are the liver, the stomach, the spleen, and the pancreas. On this image, we're just pointing out the gallbladder, the kidneys, which are on the other image as well as the spleen shown too. So contrast media. We're looking at the radiographic demonstration. The alimentary canal requires the use of contrast media with single contrast, which can be barium sulfate, water-soluble iodine if your patient has a perforation, air carbon dioxide if you're reducing an intussusception for single contrast. For double contrast, we're going to use barium sulfate and air. We're going to demonstrate small lesions and the muscular lining of the stomach. Barium sulfate is universally used in examinations of the alimentary canal. It's a dry powder or liquid. It's available in different concentrations and is mixed with plain water. It does have the problem of flocculation where it does come out as suspension, so there are agents that are added to it to help prevent that. However, it coats the mucosal lining and does a much better job than water-soluble iodine. So the advantage of water-soluble iodine is the whole purpose is for perforation, but they would be easily removed by aspiration before or after surgery, and there's no ill result if iodinated medium escapes into the peritoneum. The disadvantage is its bitter taste if you have to drink it, hyperosmolar because it moves excess fluid into the GI tract lumen, and iodinated solutions become diluted in the small intestine so clear anatomic detail cannot be seen. And this is an image of a barium enema on the left-hand side using barium sulfate, but on the right-hand side using water-soluble iodine. So it is noticeable, fairly noticeable that the barium sulfate does a much better job coating the mucosa lining of the colon. However, water-soluble iodine is used in the case of perforations. This concludes our lesson on anatomy of the digestive system.